Go ahead.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for making time to meet with us today and get an update from the city. My name is Victoria Cross. I lead government and stakeholder relations here in BC with the Heating, Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Institute of Canada, or HRAI. I'm joining from Vancouver. This is, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Honored to be here today. We have a lot of members in the room, but for folks that are not familiar with HRAI, we're a national nonprofit trade association of manufacturers, wholesalers, contractors, and more in the heating, refrigeration, ventilation, and air conditioning industries. And since 1968, HRAI has been the voice of the HVAC industry in Canada. So for anyone who's not a member yet, there are perks. So if you're interested, reach out to us. You can either reach out to me or membership at hrai.ca. And memberships include discounts to leaderships and technical trainings, industry information and resources, and of course, the government advocacy programs that I'm working on. So on to the topic of the day. As you know, as many of you know, the City of Vancouver is taking steps to address climate change through the Climate Emergency Action Plan, which was approved by Council in 2020. So we know that the HVAC industry plays a very important role in the success of the climate policies. And so we want to make sure that industry is both aware of what's happening and also at the table to help shape better policy. So for specifically today, the city is working to develop policy to address emissions from space heating and domestic hot water. After consultation over the past few months and longer, the folks from the city have joined us today to provide an update on some of their proposed recommendations. So we are joined by Chris Higgins, Senior Green Building Planner, kindly joining us today to walk us through this topic. And we're also joined by Brandon Clevenger as well, who is a climate and emissions inspector, and he'll be reminding us about some upcoming permitting updates. So Brandon, I will kick it over to you to get started.
Great, thanks, Victoria. The first thing we want to kind of do is I just wanted to take a poll and see what people in the industry are already aware about. So we're going to put a poll up on the screen here, which is asking if you're aware of the new mechanical permit requirements for the City of Vancouver beginning July 1st, 2022. So if you can click yes or no to that, we'll tally the results. And for those that aren't familiar, beginning July 1st, we are going to be requiring a new permit for the City of Vancouver. It's going to be a mechanical systems permit. It's meant to capture space heating and cooling systems across all building types. So this includes low-rise residential, commercial, etc. There's more information available about that new permit on our website. I'm going to add that into the chat box. It's the mechanical permit page, as well as we're going to have a question and answer session on the first Wednesday of every month. So the next session will be June 1st for this year. I welcome you to attend those sessions should you have questions about these mechanical systems permits. And I'll post that to this group now. It looks like about 30% are aware of it. So I'll post those links and you can do a little bit more research, and we encourage you to join the question and answer session on the 1st. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. That's all from you, Brandon?
That's it.
Excellent, thanks, thank you. So my name is Chris Higgins and I work with the City of Vancouver. I work strictly on low-rise residential. So a lot of that work is 3 stories and under. Today I'm talking just about detached homes and duplexes, so single family homes and duplexes, which cover about 65% of the City of Vancouver. This is a proposed regulation for existing homes. So this is existing homes as opposed to new homes. So as context, when thinking about carbon pollution in the City of Vancouver, 57% of it comes from gas use in buildings. So it's the largest individual piece, 37% from gas and diesel in vehicles, 3% from electricity and the neighborhood energy utility, and 4% from waste. So certainly tackling gas use in buildings is the largest individual piece. Council, which sets staff direction, has said by 2030 they want to see a 50% reduction in carbon pollution compared to 2007 levels. So it's a pretty significant reduction, and will require pretty significant action to achieve. Today, the presentation is just talking about single-family homes and duplexes, but we get the question a lot, what are you doing on multifamily residential or commercial or industrial? There are other staff that are working with those groups, specifically to reduce emissions, but single-family and duplex being the largest individual one, it's one of the first going to council. There's 4 parts to the regulation, the proposed regulation that we've engaged on. Hot water, time of replacement, a requirement there. Space heating, time of replacement, a requirement. A cooling requirement, a requirement when you're installing whole home, permanently plumbed or wired cooling. And then a renovation requirement for renovations over $250,000. For context, in Vancouver, we probably issue around 600 new construction street-facing single-family home permits a year. We probably issue 150 renovation permits for renovations over $250,000. So it's a pretty significant, you consider how many new homes we build. So the first 2 pieces, I'm basically highlighting hot water. That'll actually be coming to council in 2023 for later enactment. So this presentation, I really wanted to highlight that there'll be an additional opportunity to provide feedback on hot water regulation, because that we won't be taking that to council till 2023. Space heating, also bringing that to council in 2023. So there'll be additional opportunities to give feedback there. What we are bringing to council the 17th of May, we will be bringing forward a requirement that for all permitted air conditioning, so this is typically either whole home cooling or cooling in multiple rooms where you've got either a mini split or some sort of a ducted system. For those sort of systems, all permitted AC units must be heat pumps. They must be able to heat and cool. The home could still have another primary heating system. It could be a furnace, it could be a boiler, but if they are retrofitting in cooling, it must provide heating and cooling. So that's proposed for January 1st, 2023, and we're going to council May 17th. The second proposed requirement is for renovations. So this is renovations over $250,000. The proposed requirement is to align with new construction, which requires you install electric space heating and electric hot water. So whether that's a heat pump for space heating and a heat pump for hot water, or it could possibly be electric resistance, although mostly, as we see in new construction, we expect heat pumps to be installed for space heating and to a degree for hot water. So that's a renovation requirement just for renovations over $250,000. We often in Vancouver will see full home reconstructions where they're putting in a new foundation, they're gutting the house inside and out, and those would fall under the renovation requirement as well. So those are the 2 proposed requirements, one around cooling, one around renovations. We did get feedback from the public. The feedback that we got on ACs and large renovations was 2/3 indicated that it was about right, or it doesn't go far enough. They wanted to see greater action. The majority of owners or renters were supportive, although some from renters we saw a greater number of them feel like the policy didn't go far enough. There were some, while there was a good level of support, there were some concerns around cost and the need for continued owner supports. Many people on the call will be aware that the City of Vancouver presently tops up the funding available from Clean BC and BC Hydro. So in the City of Vancouver, you can, as a single family home, you can get up to $12,000 in rebate for installing a cold climate heat pump for space heating, and you can get up to $2,000 for installing a heat pump for water heating. So what are the impact of these regulations? Well, if you look, it's sort of in the slightly to the right of the middle of the slide. These proposed actions reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by about 4,200 tons a year. And if you look at the potential 2023 actions, they are more significant, considering renewable replacement of hot water would be a further 6% reduction, and a potential 2023 action for renewable space heating would be a further 18%. So both pretty significant, and that builds on the reductions we've achieved since 2007, as well as homes that are demolished and reconstructed as zero emissions, along with voluntary actions and voluntary retrofits, and a greater blend of renewable gas. So 50% is within striking distance with these proposed policies and the 2023 policies. So in summary, today, the two actions that we're seeking your feedback on is the proposed cooling requirement, which would, for anyone installing whole home cooling or multi-room cooling where it's permanently plumbed and wired, typically we see mini splits or partially ducted systems. The requirement is that the condenser be able to heat and cool, as opposed to just cooling. The goal there is both simplifying supply chain, but also building the supply chain for heat pumps, which are going to be, we see them as increasingly needed as we transition away from non-renewable energy like gas. And then the second requirement is for renovations over $250,000. And for renovations over $250,000, the requirement would align with new construction, and the home would need to retrofit either with a heat pump or another electrical heating solution. And so with that, Carrie, do you have a poll that you could bring up?
No, that's something Loretta will have for us.
Oh, great. There we go. So here are the two questions. The first one's, will only allowing heat pumps that heat and cool make inventory simpler? Yes or no? And then would it make inventory simpler if the regulation was province-wide, which isn't in Vancouver's authority, but we certainly could make that request of the province. So if you're able to provide feedback, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. And maybe while people are answering the question, I'll just say we have gotten feedback from industry and from the public over the last 5 months on feedback on this draft regulation. And we look forward to additional opportunities to get feedback on space heating and hot water. And I see there's a question, but maybe Loretta can bring that up. Thank you. So I see 60% say yes, this will make inventory simpler. 41% said no. And then in terms of the province's question, 80% agree that if the province were able to do it, it would make the inventory simpler, and 20% feel like it would not make inventory simpler. So that's very helpful. Thank you very much. Loretta, do we want to go over to questions now? I saw one pop up, but then it disappeared. So maybe
there's oh, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, there's if you go in some people are putting some questions in the chat. So there's
Great.
something here that says what will be the requirement to pull the mechanical permit? Does this have anything to do with the HPSC certification, or is that just rebates?
Great question. Brandon, do you want to take that question on the mechanical permit, please?
Yes, and I just typed my response into that box as well. But hi, Eddie. Thanks. For more information on the mechanical permit, it can be found on that webpage. But it's just as a brief overview. To pull a mechanical permit, it'll have to be pulled by a licensed contractor, whether that's electrical, plumbing, gas fitters, A and B, etc. And then as part of the mechanical permit, we'll be requiring drawings, heat loss calculations in some cases, as well as plans, potentially site photos, those sorts of items that you would see. The mechanical permit itself will be issued instantaneously at most for most archetypes of design, and it'll be done through our POSSE interface, just like other trade permits. It's a new trade permit, so think of it similar to the electrical or gas permits. And to answer your question about HPSC, that is the regulation for the heat pump installations. So to install a heat pump under the mechanical permit, you will be required to possess that certification with the City of Vancouver.
Sorry, I think there's a couple of other questions if you wanted to take that. How is the city going to determine if a reno is above 250,000? So why don't you answer that one, then we'll go on to the next one.
Great. Yeah. So consistent with today, there's a declared permit value. So the applicant, be it the architect or the builder or the designer or the homeowner, they declare the value of the permit. And the city does do a calculation, a calculation sort of estimating the value, though I would say the city kind of consistently underestimates the actual value of the renovation. So I would say people that declare a $250,000 renovation, it's often more like a $350,000 renovation, but it is a declaration that the project makes, and then the city checks. Although we do consistently sort of underestimate the value of the renovation. But yeah, it is something that the project team will state the value of the renovation. And we do have currently other requirements. I think it's 90 or it's $100,000 at that threshold. We require homes to upgrade the water line. So we do get a lot of permit applications just under that threshold. Projects want to avoid having to upgrade the water line, and we expect similar here. The intent here is to capture larger renovations. So, I mean, certainly someone doing $500,000 or greater is not going to declare the renovation worth 250,000 or less. So it is a self-stated declaration, which the city does check. So hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Okay, actually, there's a couple of other questions. One in the
Great.
Q&A, and there's actually, I think, two more in the chat. Isn't emission reduction targets of 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030 or 2007 level?
Yeah, so I mean, the council set the baseline for us as the 2007 level. So 2007 is our baseline year. And then staff have asked, council has told us that by 2030, they want to see a 50% reduction from the 2007 level. So certainly we could pick a different baseline year and then have different emission reductions, but we're given the 2007 year as our baseline year.
Okay.
So the 50% reduction is from the 2007 level.
Okay, and we have heat pumps in the north and interior will struggle in the winter. There's more of a comment.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess a two-part answer. I mean, one part's the obvious of Vancouver. We're all in sort of the south, more southern climate. 75 to 80% of British Columbians live in the southern and coastal British Columbia. You're definitely right. Folks living far up north. I have a friend that has a heat pump north of Prince George, and they have a wood stove as backup. So heat pumps certainly can work in the north, but yeah, certainly below negative 25 Celsius, they do need a secondary or a backup system. I completely agree.
Okay, so I'm just going to go over to the Q&A section, then run back to the chat. To calculate the reduction in carbon, what operating efficiency of equipment did you use? 80, 95, 97 or less?
So I think the question is, what sort of equipment are we assuming is being replaced in terms of the operating efficiency? I think we assumed on the higher end. So for space heating, I believe we picked a equipment efficiency of 85 or 90%. I'd have to check. For hot water, we picked a lower percentage because we do see a lot of mid-efficiency tanks in the city of Vancouver, and so we picked a lower efficiency. I think it was 67% for domestic hot water. So that was the baseline that's assuming what's being replaced. We do see some homes that have boilers that do space heating and hot water, but definitely we see more houses that have mid-efficiency non-condensing tanks. So that gives some context to assumptions that we had around what equipment was being removed. Thank you.
Okay, so we have, will there be efficiency requirements for the heat pumps?
It's a good question for Brandon. My recollection is we are mirroring the efficiency requirements at the provincial level. That said, there are incentives that require higher efficiency equipment. Clean BC has the higher efficiency levels spelled out on their website. And typically what we've seen so far is these higher efficiency units being installed because homeowners want to get the rebates. Brandon, do you have anything more to add to that?
No, that's pretty much correct, Chris. With one or two minor adjustments to that is that within the City of Vancouver, we mandate for space cooling and heating systems that they be variable speed or inverter driven. So no single phase options permitted for within the City of Vancouver for space heating only. We do make the allowance for that for domestic hot water dedicated systems, but that is the one major change that we have from the province.
Okay,
Great.
I have another question from Darcy. With the reduction in gas use, what is the calculated net increase in electricity consumption by 2030?
It's a good question. I don't have the exact figure at hand. The assumptions around heat pumps is that average efficiency is between 250 and 300%. So for every, if we put everything in kilowatt hours, for every kilowatt hour reduced for every kilowatt hour that was being used to power a gas appliance, we're looking at something in the range of 50 to 75% reduction in terms of the additional kilowatt hours needed to run heat pumps. We have been in conversation kind of constantly with BC Hydro to ensure that the grid is both ready for the transition towards electrification of space heating and hot water. Also, Vancouver has related plans to densify, so whether that's more townhouses or whether that's more mid-rise apartment buildings or whether that's more high rises, BC Hydro needs to be able to provide additional energy. And the conversations that we've had with BC Hydro out to 2030, the Site C project and other generation projects that are coming on stream will providing enough energy to allow for the electrification, both of transportation through electric vehicles, as well as electrification of space heating and hot water. But if the person that asked the question is interested in a more specific answer, I'm happy to follow up after the meeting to share some of the calculations that we've done. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question here. Given that much of the renewable natural gas Fortis hopes to supply will come from industrial factory methane production, not from landfills, how will RNG reduce greenhouse gases?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a tricky one to answer. As a city, we're constantly sort of improving our understanding of renewable gas, and the person that asked the question is correct. The majority of the projected RNG comes from agricultural, forestry, and sources outside of the province. The BC Utility Commission filing that Fortis did a few weeks back kind of outlines all the different sources. And so we have gotten lots of feedback from citizens and industry that have raised concerns around renewable gas as a greenhouse gas reduction. And other stakeholders have raised concerns around renewable gas being used in homes where there is an electrification option. So one of the things that we've done is we're allowing this greater amount of time to consult on the inclusion of renewable gas as an option for space heating and hot water, because we haven't fully answered that question on the ability of renewable gas to reduce greenhouse gases and whether or not this is the ideal place to use renewable gas. That's one of the reasons why we're not taking forward those draft changes on space heating and hot water till 2023 because we need a little bit more time to answer the renewable gas question. So yeah, that's a great question. Hopefully that answer helps. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few more here. Are the heat pump refrigerants a factor? There's a trend towards lower GWP. Will that be supported?
Great question. Yeah, so certainly the City of Vancouver supports the trend towards lower GWP refrigerants, and we'd be open to feedback on what the industry would like to see. And we've had talks internally about having a greater incentive available for low GWP refrigerants. So for instance, we have heat pump hot water heaters today that run off more traditional refrigerants, and then there are also heat pump hot water heaters that run off of CO2, carbon dioxide, which is a much lower greenhouse, less potent greenhouse gas. And we've debated the idea of providing an additional financial incentive, but to date, we haven't provided that additional financial incentive. So we'd definitely be open to feedback. And I don't know, Loretta, what the best way for members to provide feedback is, but the City of Vancouver would certainly be happy to receive it. If you wanted to email Brendan or I, or if Loretta, you prefer to go through HRAI, that works well. We'd love to know what HRAI members would like to see in terms of the city supporting the transition to lower GWP refrigerants. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Have a couple more questions. Are you mirroring the odd requirement from HPSC and the provincial rebates that are only available for functioning units being replaced? It seems very odd that the high efficiency replacement cannot get rebates for a completely failed unit if MHPC and HPSC don't align on this. I can't see this being a, sorry, I can see this being a problem.
Okay. Apologies if I don't grasp the question, but I think the question is around, will the City of Vancouver provide rebates even if the equipment is non-functional? If that is the question, yes, the City of Vancouver, we provide our top up, our incentives, even if your furnace isn't working. So I replaced my furnace with a heat pump, and my furnace was non-functional. It died, and I still was eligible for the rebate. So that's not a requirement that the City of Vancouver has, and we would certainly provide that feedback to others to encourage them to allow the rebate to be available, even if the equipment is failed. As everyone on the call is probably going to know better than me, 80 to 85% of equipment replacement happens at the time of failure. So we really need to have those incentives in place when the equipment fails for the majority of people that are going to make that replacement decision then. And if I haven't addressed the question or didn't understand it, please just let me know. Thank you.
So it does seem like an incentive would be a positive thing. And we've had a couple of chats or people respond in the chat. So that's some great feedback. We could be doing some surveys of our members to get some feedback for you. And I'll work with Victoria on that. I have one more question, and I'm wondering actually if, I'll just read this one out here. Are you saying a heat pump would use 40 to 70% less hydro than a boiler based on the same BTU output?
Yeah, so if we're looking at, I'll put everything in electrical terms and assume electrical is the base fuel, but if you have an electric boiler is somewhere around 99% efficient. If you have a cold climate heat pump, you're probably somewhere around 250 to 300% efficient. So in going from something that's using 1 kilowatt, is 1 kilowatt hour, for instance, for space heating with the boiler, and then you're trying to produce that same amount of energy with a heat pump, and you're able to use a fraction of that, certainly less than half. Yeah, there is a significant reduction in the amount of energy required from the grid to produce that heat using a heat pump. Yeah, we could certainly do a calculation to get the exact amount, but certainly you're looking at, yeah, a 50 to 60% reduction in the amount of energy needed to produce heat with either an electric boiler and then going to electric. If you go from gas to electric heat pump, the reduction in energy would be a little greater, because obviously a gas boiler is not 99% efficient. They're going to be sort of, in Vancouver, we often see sort of 92 to 94% efficiency, but there is a lower level of efficiency. Now, there's a separate conversation which is around cost. Gas is presently a little bit less expensive. So as a result, a heat pump and a gas furnace, for example, have similar operating costs if you're looking at a cold climate heat pump in the city of Vancouver. But just in terms of efficiency and grid energy reductions, switching from, say, an electric boiler to an electric heat pump, it is quite a significant energy use reduction. And shifting from gas boiler to an electric heat pump, the grid energy use is much lower. Now, there's a separate kind of conversation about, well, one is a gas grid and one is an electric grid. That is true. They are separate, but if we just look at it in terms of energy use reductions, it is certainly greater than a 50% reduction. Thank you.
So Chris, do you have any more of your presentation, or because we're sort of getting to the last few questions, and I'm wondering if you want to do any sort of final wrap up, or?
Yeah, I can do a wrap up when we reach the end of the questions. I mean, certainly, I really appreciate people's feedback here. What we're hoping is, and based on the polling, it seems that there is support. But what we really like to see is many industry organizations have provided, if they're supportive of the regulation, they provide a letter to say, we support these regulations, and we'd like to be engaged in the following ways for the 2023 regulations for space heating, saying we'd really like a presentation this spring or this summer or this fall. So if that was something that HRAI membership was open to, that feedback would be helpful. Also, if there's things you think the city can be doing, so one member here had raised the issue of providing additional incentive for low GWP refrigerants. That's something that we can definitely look at. If there are other things you'd like to see the City of Vancouver doing, please let us know. We did get a wholesaler that contacted us the other day that really wanted the city to work with BCIT on training, and so specifically on a quicker training program for residential installers of heat pumps. So that's a conversation we're going to have with that wholesaler and with BCIT. We certainly welcome, of course, HRAI in that discussion.
Okay.
But yeah. If there's additional things you'd like to see from the city, please let us know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll work on getting some feedback from our members in BC. I have one more question, and it's about it says here, I've read that the City of Vancouver is talking to BC Hydro about heat pump users not being billed in Tier 2. So any progress with BC Hydro? Yeah,
great question. I'm happy to follow up with HRA to send them this detail, but if you Google BC Hydro rate review, you'll see a page that outlines 2 or 3 rates that Hydro is going to, likely to propose to the BC Utilities Commission. So one is a electric vehicle charging rate, which is a low flat rate at night, I think of 5 cents a kilowatt hour. They're also proposing an optional or opt-in time of use rate, where you get lower rates most of the time, flat lower rates, and then the higher rate between 4 and 9 p.m. November, December, January, February. So they're proposing this optional time of use rate, and then they're also going to propose a flat sort of electrification rate. So a 1 tier, if you want to consider it that way, but a flat electrical rate, which would encourage electrification. So if you have a home that's heated with a heat pump and you have hot water that's electrical, you're cooking with electricity, drying clothes with electricity, the flat rate is likely to be advantageous to you because you don't have that two-tiered. So in terms of answering the question, we have had discussions with BC Hydro. They have been productive, and BC Hydro is through their rate review process has listened, and we expect to see a BC Utilities Commission application probably sometime this spring or summer. Thank you.
Sorry, I apologize. I think that ends our presentation for today. This session is being recorded and will be available most likely tomorrow morning. And you'll get a link. Any participants will get a link. We also have a survey that will be going out as well. So please feel free to fill out the survey so it helps us provide some more information like this in the future. Chris and Victoria, I think we'll probably be in touch maybe to do some sort of survey with our members to get some more feedback. And with that, I thank everyone for attending today's session. And if you have any questions, Chris, how would we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So you certainly can reach out to us directly.
Yeah.
The best person to reach out to would be Carrie. Carrie, could you put your email in the chat? Is that possible? And then Carrie can direct it either to Brandon, who's dealing with the heating systems permit, or myself dealing with these two pieces. So Carrie will put her email in the chat. That's a great email address to reach out to. Brandon, do you have an email, either a generic email that you want to share or your own email?
Yeah, I'm actually just typing it into the chat now, but it's also linked on the page before, but it's just cleanenergy@vancouver.ca, but I'll add that to the chat now.
Great. Thank you, Brandon.
Okay, then. Well, great. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be talking soon then. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Brandon.
Great. Thank you, HRIA members. Greatly appreciated your time.
No worries.
Have a great day.